Coffee is the second most traded physical commodity on planet Earth, right behind crude oil. Right now, in massive agricultural markets from Brazil to Vietnam, raw coffee beans trade for a mere fraction of a cent per cup. It is one of the cheapest, most abundant agricultural crops in human history. Yet, every single morning, millions of people walk out of a green and white store holding a cup of liquid that cost less than 50 cents to produce, having willingly paid $6, $8, or even $10 for it. That is not a normal retail markup. That is an unheard of 10,000% markup on a basic raw commodity. If a local diner tried to charge you $8 for a basic cup of black coffee, you would walk out in absolute disgust. But when Starbucks does it, people stand in line out the door, clutching their mobile phones, waiting patiently for the exact same underlying commodity. How did a company take a dirt-cheap agricultural bean, available on virtually every corner of the globe, and transform it into a $100 billion modern financial empire? The answer lies in one of the most brilliant business transformations in corporate history. Because Starbucks does not sell coffee. They engineered a global commodity monopoly disguised as an everyday luxury. And once you see how the trap was set, you will understand why you keep paying for it. To see how this transformation actually happened, you have to travel back to the early 1980s, when coffee in America was in a complete death spiral. Back then, coffee was treated like canned soup or salt. It was a cheap, bitter, utility drink brewed at home in cheap tins, or poured into styrofoam cups at greasy diners for 25 cents. It was an unbranded, low-margin commodity, and consumers viewed it as completely replaceable. If one diner raised their coffee price by 5 cents, customers instantly went to the diner across the street. The entire industry was trapped in a race to the bottom, fighting over pennies. Then, a young salesman named Howard Schultz took a trip to Milan, Italy, and noticed something that defied traditional American economics. In Italy, coffee bars were not just places to grab a caffeine hit. They were sacred social hubs. People gathered, conversed, and built daily rituals around espresso. Schultz realized a profound economic truth that would change retail forever. If you sell coffee as a liquid commodity, you are bound by commodity prices, but if you sell the environment, the status, and the daily emotional ritual, you can decouple your product from its underlying cost entirely. When Starbucks launched its mass expansion, they didn't position themselves against local coffee shops. They created an entirely new real estate category called the third place. Your home is your first place. Your office is your second place. And Starbucks became the comfortable, warm, mid-century modern environment in between. By adding soft leather armchairs, warm lighting, jazz music playing gently in the background, and free Wi-Fi long before anyone else offered it, Starbucks gave you permission to sit for hours. You weren't paying $4 for 40 cents of coffee liquid. You were paying $4 to rent a temporary office, a meeting space, or a cozy sanctuary away from home. And just like that, they successfully shifted coffee from a cheap daily commodity into an accessible, mass-market luxury item. But creating a pleasant third place was only the beginning. Because running large physical stores with soft armchairs is expensive. Rent, electricity, and labor quickly eat away at store profits. So how did Starbucks go from a cozy coffeehouse chain to generating software-level profit margins that rival Silicon Valley giants? They executed a secondary, far more lucrative business pivot. They transformed coffee into a high-margin customization engine. Look closely at a standard cup of black coffee on their menu board. A plain black iced coffee yields a modest profit margin, because it is still tied closely to the perception of regular coffee. So, Starbucks deliberately redesigned their menu to push consumers toward complex, handcrafted beverages, frappuccino drinks, cold brews, macchiatos, and seasonal specialty lattes. And here is where the unit economics get terrifyingly profitable. The base price of a specialty drink might be $5, but then comes the customization cascade. Would you like oat milk instead of dairy? That will be an extra 85 cents. Want 2 pumps of sugar-free vanilla syrup? Add 75 cents. Want extra cold foam on top? That is another $1.25 to you. Adding cold foam and vanilla syrup feels like a small, trivial upgrade to your morning treat. To Starbucks accounting, those add-ons are pure profit machine oil. The actual cost of that tiny splash of syrup or squirt of aerated milk is less than 3 cents in raw inventory. Yet they charge you up to $1.50 for it. That single customization carries a gross profit margin exceeding 95%. When you order an $8 customized cold brew, you are no longer buying coffee at all. You are buying a high-margin dessert creation where the raw agricultural commodity makes up less than 5% of the total price ticket. They turned a 5-cent commodity into a liquid canvas for microtransactions. Yet, even with 95% margins on syrup, a business cannot grow into a global juggernaut without total control over its supply chain. If coffee bean prices spike globally due to droughts, bad harvests, or shipping disruptions, how does Starbucks keep its massive profit engine running smoothly without destroying its margins? This brings us to their invisible macroeconomic shield: supply chain vertical integration. Most independent coffee shops buy their beans from regional distributors, who buy from international commodity traders, who buy from local exporters. Every middleman in that chain takes a cut, making small coffee shops incredibly vulnerable to global price swings. Starbucks completely bypassed this system. They built their own global sourcing network, establishing direct relationships with over 400,000 coffee farmers across Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Because Starbucks purchases massive percentages of the world's high-grade Arabica coffee crop, they possess immense market power over suppliers. They use complex financial derivatives, known as futures contracts, to lock in raw coffee bean prices years into the future. If coffee bean prices skyrocket on the open market tomorrow, Starbucks doesn't care. They locked in their purchase prices 2 years ago at a fixed, discounted rate. They effectively neutralized the biggest risk in agricultural retail: commodity volatility. Furthermore, Starbucks controls its own massive roasting facilities around the globe. They roast their beans using proprietary, highly consistent methods designed for one specific outcome: global uniformity. Whether you buy a latte in Tokyo, London, New York, or Dubai, the flavor profile is engineered to be identical. By standardizing the roast, they ensure that even lower-cost, high-yield bean harvests taste exactly like the branded Starbucks experience customers expect. They eliminated supplier friction, removed the middlemen, locked in fixed commodity costs, and built a global supply chain monopoly that local competitors simply cannot replicate. Which brings us to an even deeper mystery. If Starbucks has such massive profit margins and complete supply chain control, why do they keep opening stores just 2 blocks away from each other? Have you ever walked down a busy city street, past a crowded Starbucks, crossed the intersection, and seen another Starbucks sitting right across the street? To an average observer, this looks like complete corporate madness. Wouldn't 2 stores in the exact same neighborhood simply steal customers from each other and destroy their own profits? In traditional business, that is called store cannibalization. But in the Starbucks playbook, it is a ruthless strategy designed to eliminate local competition. Starbucks realized that the single biggest bottleneck to their sales volume wasn't customer demand. It was store queue length. If a morning commute line at one store reaches 10 people, busy office workers will look at the line, keep walking, and buy coffee from a local independent cafe down the block. By opening a second store right across the street, Starbucks absorbs that spillover traffic instantly, even if the second store steals 30% of the first store's revenue. The combined locations capture 90% of the total neighborhood traffic. More importantly, it starves local independent coffee shops of foot traffic, driving small competitors out of business simply because they cannot afford the high real estate costs. Starbucks purposefully uses its massive corporate balance sheet to flood high-density urban corridors, effectively buying up retail real estate monopolies 1 block at a time. They don't just own the coffee market in a city. They physically own the morning commute. And yet, as bulletproof as this macroeconomic model sounds, the entire multi-billion-dollar empire is sitting on top of a massive, slow-moving threat that could disrupt their profits forever. It is not competition from other fast food chains. It isn't even changing consumer tastes. It is the raw, undeniable reality of global agricultural economics. Coffee plants, specifically the high-quality Arabica beans that Starbucks relies on for its entire brand identity, are extremely delicate crops. They require very specific altitudes, precise temperatures, and steady rainfall patterns to grow. As global climate patterns shift, suitable coffee-growing land across Central America and Africa is shrinking rapidly. Extreme weather events, prolonged droughts, and agricultural diseases like coffee leaf rust are destroying harvests at an unprecedented rate. Agricultural economists predict that up to 50% of current high-quality coffee-growing land could become unusable over the next few decades. When global supply contracts dramatically, coffee prices will inevitably surge, even with futures contracts and massive supply chains. Starbucks cannot hedge against a world where physical Arabica beans simply become scarce. If the raw cost of a cup of coffee doubles or triples over the next decade, Starbucks faces a brutal dilemma. Do they raise drink prices even higher, pushing an $8 latte to $12 or $15 and risking massive consumer backlash? Or do they absorb the rising commodity costs and watch their legendary profit margins slowly wither away? At the exact same time, they are fighting an internal operational battle on their home turf. The modern Starbucks customer is no longer sitting in soft armchairs enjoying the third place. Over 70% of modern Starbucks orders now come through mobile app pre-orders and drive-through windows. The warm Italian coffeehouse experience has morphed into an ultra-fast, high-stress drive-through assembly line. Baristas are tasked with making hundreds of hyper-complex, customized drinks every single hour, leading to massive employee burnout. Unionization pushes across hundreds of stores, and slower service times. Starbucks is caught in a structural squeeze. Their core identity was built on a slow, premium experience, but their current financial engine relies on fast food speed and extreme liquid volume. So, how are they planning to protect their billion-dollar profit engine for the next generation?